Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Dharma Collective. Welcome to the Well of Being Wednesday. Welcome to winter. We had like 2 weeks of summer. It's over. I don't think so. I think we'll get some sun again. But there's something nice about that atmospheric change. The fall and the winter are such a beautiful time for practice because their attention and energy kind of naturally comes inward, less light outside, more kind of invitation for that inward looking. I used to really struggle with the end of summer as a sun and summer lover, but I feel like there's a lot more, opportunity now for feeling into the beauty, the dark richness of winter and those months, especially for practice. Friends online, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. I see a lot of regular info, like folks who come in person online because they didn't want to brave the nasty weather. Just kidding. Sorry? That that it rained? Yeah, but it rained. So that's unusual. Summer rain, also unusual. Can they hear, you guys can hear us online? Thumbs up? Okay, great. Wonderful. So for those who were here last week, welcome back. For those who weren't, we are starting this beautiful book by Tsoknyi Rinpoche, Open Heart, Open Mind. And he's actually teaching right now at Garrison Institute in New York. And there's some folks I know who are there. And yeah, it just feels really nice to be connected with a teacher who is offering these teachings now. A lot of the books we read, the teachers are no longer with us, like 8th century, and or the Buddha. And it's really nice to be in the living stream of this teacher and what he has to offer. And I mentioned last week, some of the qualities I think he really brings as a contemporary teacher is he is such a bridge and a translator of these ancient practices in a contemporary psychological context. And today we'll get into a little bit of his story, which he tells in the second chapter of how he came to be a teacher and his family of origin. And in some ways, the story of unbroken lineage of Buddhist teachings. And that might be a term you've heard before, but it's actually, when you think about it, it's kind of mind-blowing. We think about, I don't have any of these, but maybe some of you might have a recipe that was passed down from a great-grandmother. Anybody have anything like that? No, maybe there's a movie. Okay, there's some nods, right? And there's like that really nice kind of sense on the paper. You can like feel it. You can tell that it was used and loved and, guided people to these wonderful dinners, let's hope. And that's like a unbroken lineage for like 3 generations. And then you think about these teachings and the teachings of the Buddha, spanning at least 2,000 years. And there was never a time in which these teachings were not transmitted in groups like this, and where, folks like myself get to learn from teachers and then share and then, be in community. There's something about that unbroken lineage that's so impressive. Again, thinking of some of the places even that we have in this country, like there is nothing that is built here that is 2,000 years old. Nothing, and there are some franchises that are maybe 100, 120 years old. And those are out of commerce, and there's an exchange of money, and the purpose of them, maybe it's for nourishment, maybe it's food or otherwise, but this is like spiritual nourishment with no exchange of money for thousands of years. That's very encouraging. It's very encouraging to kind of place our aspirations in these teachings that have been that kind of support. And we'll talk a little bit about, particularly how Buddhism came to Tibet and the kinds of teachings this is coming from. The last couple days I got to be at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. I'm sure many of you know, and there was a convening that invited a lot of people who teach meditation and who are interested in what they're calling eco-Dharma, or meditation that relates to how we can support ourselves and others with the needs of our planet, and how do we kind of feel the joy, the inspiration, and the action to do so. And it was just it was really beautiful to have a gathering so targeted to that. And there was a moment when one of the teachers, Jack Cornfield, who's also one of the founders of the center, was sharing that he really feels like the biggest climate work is like the inner climate work, which is certainly a reflection of the outer climate we live in. And last week, in the opening of these teachings, Tsoknyi Rinpoche talks about samsara and the kind of difficulties of samsara, always wanting things to be just a little more comfortable and a little less, difficult, and that momentum kind of carrying us in endless cycles of looking for something that's better. And he said that endless cycle, that kind of inability to reflect and bring awareness to the true causes of happiness and suffering, that is a reflection of our world, right? And instead of that world out there is making me like this, to see the kind of connection. These are both happening. And again, I'm not saying the world out there is our fault, but there is a undeniable interconnection between the inner world and the outer world. And I feel personally like I'm not even quite sure how the teachings of these last couple days at Spirit Rock will land with me, and in ways I hope to share with you all. But that invitation for what Thich Nhat Hanh would call engaged Buddhism or active Buddhism, a way that we bring the ethics and the values of these teachings into the world. We all do that with our individual body, hearts, and minds. But how we do that as a collective is something I'm inspired about. We do have the annual Dia de los Muertos, which is really our kind of manifesting into community from this Sangha. And yeah, would just love to hear from you all whenever it feels right, maybe after a sit some night, of how do you think about engaged Buddhism and what we might be able to do as a community and a collective in this world that needs so much. Because I spent the first days there thinking like, what do I need to do and how can we do this? I was like, oh wait, it's not up to me. It's actually up to all of us. And yeah, just to say, these teachings, always we're including bodhicitta in these teachings, meaning inviting the awakened heart as our inspiration, this desire to become these warriors of compassion for all beings. Like, we're not just sitting here for stress reduction, though it does reduce our stress to be here, and that's important. But like, how do we, decide the ways that we can, let these teachings guide us to do something greater, and what is it that we can do as individuals or possibly together. So that's been very much on the heart mind. And one thing that we talked about last week, and I want to kind of reflect on before we go into practice, is, and if you weren't here last week, yes, my book looks weird. I spilled my tea on it on the way here. It's the tea blessing for the book. If you weren't here, we had like a picture of Tsoknyi, and we did a whole offering of many things, but the tea offering is more permanent. He talked last week about just this patterning, that our emotions are never just one and done. They often represent these kind of deeper waters or these older stories for us. And, his beautiful mantra of, is my experience of this emotion in the moment real and true, or real but not true? Meaning it feels real, like I'm afraid or I'm angry or I'm sad, but it's not true now. It might have been true in the past. And that's just such a kindness to like allow our emotions to be felt as real instead of denying them or pretending they aren't there, but also bringing that lens of inquiry. Is it true? Is it true? And he describes that when we're unkind to these habitual patterns, like, I don't want to feel this anger, I don't want to feel this fear, that you can't actually break through it that way. You can't meet your fear with aggression and have it be transformed. He says that patterns often take a while to build up, and it takes a while to see them, then understand them, and loosen the knots that form them. Working with our patterns requires great kindness and gentleness, the same qualities that parents apply when they comfort their children crying in the dark. And that's a kind of common metaphor for compassion, especially compassion for a kind of suffering or pain we don't understand. So for the parents in the room, when you have a small being who you can't kind of tell or can't, talk with about their suffering, you're just holding them with all your love, even though you don't know where their suffering is coming from, and you can't tell them it's going to be okay. So it's this embodied holding of this kind of cry that we don't understand. And I think there's often that kind of not understood cry within us that we don't quite understand, and that sometimes we don't need to. It's wonderful to analyze and to investigate and to know, but sometimes just bringing the kind gentleness to hold what's here with kindness is the most compassionate thing we can do. Forget the words, forget the concepts, forget the story, just to hold. So last week we did the Handshake Practice, which is kind of the very classic Tsoknyi Rinpoche practice of meeting and being with whatever is here, especially at that layer of emotion in the body, the sensations, the residue. And this week we're going to do that again, but kind of with that holding, with that sense of holding. The delicate thing with this practice, or the kind of unique thing with this practice, is the handshake is a very specific posture towards meeting your emotions. So we can, he's such a behavioral teacher, a behavior-oriented teacher. He really teaches not as much with words, but often with gesture, with movement. So he'll say, when you meet your emotion, you don't push it down, right? You don't try to tell it to be calm and wait over there. That this handshake is a real honoring. It's like a meeting with a sense of real reverence and care and interest. Like when you meet someone you're interested in, oh, nice to meet you. There's a way you look at them and you turn towards them, curious. So this handshake with emotion is that curiosity, that interest, as though it were fresh. So some of us may be holding some emotions that don't feel quite fresh anymore. They're familiar, they're achy, we're tired of them, but we're going to try this freshness, right, of meeting and shaking hands. And the way we do that is a freshness through the sense portal of kind of felt experience, tactile sensation. So can we experience the sensation of emotion in the body freshly, shaking hands through our sensed experience of emotion? And it's even in this moment, just turning towards the body are just so many, layers and fields of sensation. And there's a way that we can kind of get dull into that or soft into that, or maybe for some of us, the habit is dissociate. Can we have that curious presence with what's here? And then I'll invite us more towards that holding, that kind of without needing to understand, without needing to change, just that full holding of care and compassion towards what's here. How's that sound? Yeah, it's pretty good. Really, could be worse. I'm not going to make you do compassion for someone you dislike tonight, see? Next week. Actually, well. finding a posture that's supportive. And I recognize most folks in the room, but for folks who are new, welcome, 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 welcome. This is a community-run center, and just such a gift, every single one of you that is here. Like every single person here matters in terms of generating and supporting practice together. And just so you all know, especially if you're new, there is a restroom in the back, and if you can wait until after the practice to use it, that's great. We have Jimmy at the door here. We are so safe. He will hold us. Sometimes it gets kind of loud out there, and that's also part of our practice. But just to let yourself be at ease and maybe take in the space, especially if you're new here, and maybe take in that there are other beings here, and as much as possible, in whatever way feels right, like welcome yourself to the space here and let yourself feel welcomed here. Taking a moment and allowing ourselves to really settle into this sensory experience of being in a body. Allowing all sense portals to be open and letting them feel smooth. Anything can pass through. Giving ourselves a full range of just listening and seeing, especially whatever we can notice behind closed eyes. Sensing in the body. Considering this invitation and opportunity to not have to be anywhere else. That the body can really settle right here in this moment. And there is, oh, so many things to do and think about in our lives. And that will certainly come. But reminding ourselves over and over, we have this invitation and this opportunity to be right here. And so feeling and sensing this present moment through all the sense portals. More deeply putting our focus into the body and inviting the body to settle into a natural state of stillness. nowhere to be, nothing to do, just an opportunity to feel the full presence of body. And inviting the inner speech, that narration going on within our own thoughts, to just gently become a bit more silent or soft, focusing on the breath as a way to anchor, and inviting this quality of silencing the inner speech by following each breath. When thoughts, memories, or images arise, with great gentleness, relax and release, and then return with renewed interest to the simple practice of following the breath. As we're continuing this settling the body into stillness, settling the inner speech into silence. And breathing in, feeling and sensing and knowing we are breathing in. Breathing out, feeling, sensing and knowing we are breathing out. And then settling the mind in its natural state. Warmth and openness. So feeling or inviting this quality of body stillness, silencing or at least turning down the inner speech. And this feeling of leaning back in the mind. And to ignite and inspire our practice, we turn to bodhicitta, to this opportunity to really set our intention and consider that some of this practice will help us in that aspiration to have a heart that's more porous and open, a mind that's more clear, and an ability to really show up for beings in need. Dedicating our practice to becoming warriors of compassion, waking up for the sake of all beings. And feeling whatever spark or inspiration of intention is here, and inviting that to just permeate the field of mind, heart, and body. And then bringing our attention now to the body, especially to this layer of subtle body, that which exists between the thinking mind and the physical form, the way in which our feelings and our emotions and our moods, they live in the body. And with this practice of shaking hands, we just meet with curiosity, whatever is here in the body. Feel, sense, or imagine there's enough space for anything that is here. It can be so tempting for the mind to go anywhere else except right here in the body, with what could be some discomfort or maybe just neutrality, lack of feeling. But using some discipline and intention, inviting ourselves to fully be here with the sensations in the body associated with emotion. If there's an emotion that feels too strong, you can almost titrate, maybe feel somewhere neutral and then come back to the sensation, seeing if it wants to shift and change. If it feels too strong, going back to that neutral place like the elbows or the back of the head. Otherwise, just stay right there. Stay with the sensation, whatever residue of emotion is here. No need for a story, not even a label. Just this courageous, curious, gentle opening. If a story arises, no problem. Gently release the story and come back to the sensation in the body. No agenda, no expectation, but remembering the truth of impermanence. Whatever is felt in the body, whatever is experienced, will keep shifting and changing. And let that give us this courage and gentleness to be with it just as it is. Very likely it'll keep changing. Maybe one sensation or bundle of emotion feeling will unfold or unravel, and the next may arise. Maybe there's not a lot of sensation for a while. No problem. Keep coming back. Keep feeling that there is plenty of space. And keep opening to the more subtle layers and levels within the body and subtle body. There are many feelings and emotions maybe waiting for this opportunity to arise and unfold and dissipate, held with our curiosity, our gentleness, our care. If there's not a lot of strong sensation associated with emotion, and allow that awareness to just permeate the body. Awareness should have the quality both of spaciousness, but also of this bright, luminous clarity. So not just relaxing and finding ease, but experiencing that curiosity, that presence. So bringing this awareness to the body and subtle body, and whatever flavor or form of emotion residue is present or absent. Feeling into just this simple level of care that is our attention. By bringing attention and awareness to the body and emotions, there's a fundamental caring for what's here. And bringing to the forefront now that fundamental caring. And feel, sense, or imagine this embrace with love for whatever is here. Bringing all our experience into this field of loving awareness. Like the parent holding the crying child in the night. Just holding whatever is here. It's that kind of dedication and love, that devotion. Fully inhabiting this care and attention and awareness. If it feels comfortable and supportive, a hand on the heart, and even another hand on the heart. That sense of cradling and loving and holding this body, this heart, this mind, just as it is. And then releasing the hands if that feels comfortable, and releasing any image of being the caring being or being the one receiving care. And just for a couple moments, feeling a sense of unconditioned compassion and awareness. This body, heart, and mind in this fundamental ground of awareness, permeated with love. Thank you for your practice. So, how lucky we are to be together and have this opportunity not only to practice, but reflect on our practice and build community. And so we take some time now to reflect or ask questions on the practice. And in doing so, exercising that unconditioned heart of compassion for all. So when we're speaking, really sharing from a place of compassion, considering what we're offering and its impact on others. And as we're listening with like just these beautiful ears of compassion, hearing the true Buddha nature emanating forth. And as much as possible, really engaging kind of multidimensionally in outrageous non-harming. Like not even a little bit of self-criticism, if possible. Not even a little bit of, wish it was warmer, wish it was colder, right? Just this total compassionate embrace of what's here, but especially of the beings here. It's so important and precious to create community, even if it's just this one night, and so delicate to do so. You know, we really are such sensitive beings. A couple degrees too warm, a couple degrees too cool, we are just miserable. Harsh word here, uncertainty there, we're just wrecked. So let's be super kind with one another. Yeah, sound good? So yeah, I'd love to hear any questions, reflections, insights from practice. And for folks in the room, we have a mic in the middle. And for friends online, you can raise a hand.
Thank you. Just a reflection. It was a very nice meditation. I've done the, shaking hands before, but this time when you said earlier, imagine you're holding someone like, like a little kid that's crying. In my family, we didn't have that. Not to say it wasn't love, but in our family, it's like if you're crying, you just like, are you okay? And pretty much you answered yes and okay. So I was just thinking about that, and in doing that, it's at 46, I was like, wow, this is kind of like what it's supposed to feel like to really hold, you hold yourself or hold someone with that intention. So it was really nice, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, different. Yeah,
So beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that, right? It's not everybody's experience to have that kind of, you know, love and attention, right? Even as the crying baby in the night, maybe you weren't held, right? Maybe your parents didn't know how, maybe they were struggling, maybe this, that, or the other. And this amazing sacred opportunity to like, I want to say reparent because that feels maybe a little too psychologized, but to hold ourselves in the love that we've needed. And this is why it's so interesting. You see, the contemporary approaches of attachment psychology, like many of us needing a secure base of love that we didn't get for one reason or another. And then meeting that with the Dharma and like being a secure base, right? And yeah, I think ongoing work for most of us, even with like as my teacher said, just having human parents, you're kind of screwed. Like doing their best, totally messing up, because it's hard to stay attuned to another being, and as I said, there's many reasons why it can even be harder. So that desire, that aspiration to feel that holding, that secure base within ourselves. And it's interesting because it's also right at the heart of like what drives the samsara. It's like, oh, I don't really feel loved in here. but we might not even recognize that. It's more like, what's out there? What's out there? What's out there? Right? And to like rest in the connection of there's a place in here that's held. It's you're cutting it off at the pass, like even before the momentum of samsara is rolling. It's like, oh, I don't even like. Why would I need that? You know. So beautiful. It's like one of my samsaric tendencies, like love grocery shopping. It's kind of harmless, but it's like it's definitely like if I get this, I'll be good. If my fridge is like full, I'll be good. Right? And the harm is usually minimal. Like sometimes I have to throw away food because I have too much. That's not so great. But I can see that there's this like maybe low level, not okay feeling to high level, not okay feeling. And it's like, let's go to the store and buy some food, right? So it's like all these ways where we're trying to meet that sense of being held in love. And I've mentioned this before, but I love Matthew Bren Silver, wonderful Dharma teacher. He says meditation is like a disorganized exposure therapy. Like stuff just arises kind of like intermittently. And I think a practice like Handshake it really invites that. You know, it's inviting, like I said earlier, maybe there's an emotion that's right here, but also maybe there's one that's kind of deeper in there that also gets a chance to be held in curiosity and love and kindness. Yeah, we don't have a lot of that time. Again, not just for the mental processing, there's so much mental processing we do, but just the kind of like tender mammalian processing, like nervous system processing of, oh, I want to just be with what's here in the body. I don't even need to know what or why. Yeah, thank you. Other questions, reflections? Especially folks might have been their first handshake practice. Yeah, Raf, and then Noemi.
Just what you just said, actually, it sparked something for me where I've struggled with a handshake in the past because I get very cognitive. It's like, okay, well, pick an emotion of sadness. Did I pick the right one? Okay, I'll pick this one. Get halfway through the process. Oh, here's a better one. But I'm thinking about this one. Maybe I can do both at the same time. And it was very calming to not have to, just be like, well, I don't have to put them into words. This is, for me, arguably like the first handshake that I feel like I not succeeded at, but just kind of was able to kind of fall into.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I wonder, because often I do suggest a particular emotion, right, as opposed to just waiting for what's here. So maybe there's something more calming about just waiting for whatever arises. It can feel a little more diffuse, you know, but also, yeah, it is interesting to kind of just let what emerges. And did you find that they were, like those sensations or feelings were at the ready? Or was there space between them? Or what was your experience?
I mean, it feels like, I don't know, like separate waves on a beach. Like, are they separate? That's what it feels like to me. In fact, maybe that's why I struggle so much when it's naming them, because it is a little bit like, oh, well, that wave, oh, is it still a wave? It's still a separate wave?
Right.
Oh, they split into two.
Yeah.
Are they now two waves?
Yeah.
So just being able to just kind of, for me, it really did feel a little bit like I've got my feet in there and it's just kind of washing. So that, I think it turned a feeling internally of chaos into just like, oh, that's just kind of, this is what it is. You don't have to
Beautiful.
pull apart the threads.
Yeah, wonderful. And again, it's funny because there's a lot of very successful emotion regulation strategies that are naming, explaining, reframing, like being very also helpful. And, you know, especially for a wonderful wild mind like yours, nice to just be that receiver, you know. So, thank you. Yeah. Noemi.
I was dealing with anger, and I would try not to get the story. And so one thing I have to say, I'm allergic to dogs.
You're allergic to dogs. Oh, okay.
And so that brought up a lot of stuff for me. And right now, my anger is really strong around how I deal with both my entitlement and other people's entitlement in a place where, in a time where there are so many people who aren't living in that entitlement. And it just brings it up and I loved Spirit Rock, and I did month-long in March, but I know that one of the issues that came up for me was it's an entitled type place. And I don't know, we don't live in a Buddhist country. And so what is the overlay of our culture, the US imperialist culture that impacts that impacts our practice. And that's what came up to me
Yeah.
during the sit.
Yeah.
And part of me wanted to put it away.
Yeah.
And my question is how to go through it. You know, you said not to put it away and say, put it over there.
Yeah.
So I was working really, I was trying to work with it, and I had great difficulty.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for that specificity, and really helpful to understand our emotions are impacted by our lived experience, by culture, by context. And you really said it at the beginning, which is it's so hard to let go of the story. And I think sometimes it's because we think if we let go of the story, we let go of the accountability or what's needed, especially with anger. Because with anger, there's an important message. There's an important message. And often the energy of it isn't needed, right? However, when we're doing the handshake practice to help us, in some ways, there's like what I think of as kind of like hot anger and then cold anger. Hot anger is often when we react and then we're like, oh shit, I wish I didn't, oh man. And the cold anger is like we've let it settle, and then there's like the clear seeing. There's the like, no, it shouldn't be that, So how do we get to the cold? It's like it needs to settle, right? And I do think handshake can help. Handshake, it's the practice I use the most with anger, and anger is the hardest emotion to shake hands with because it has this urgency. It's just built into that emotion. So I think the real key is like, can I keep cutting through the story and noticing like, wow, like field of fire on my chest, or like clenching in my hands, or softness. And it's really tricky because it'll just pop up like, I can't believe the entitlement, or da-da-da-da. Like the story will keep coming, and we just keep dropping the story, and keep dropping the story. And sometimes it's even, if specifically you want to work with an emotion like anger, to journal before. So you've kind of given your mind this like cognitive, download space. And then you're like, okay, like I know all the things, I'm just going to sit with it. I'm just going to sit with it. And, that like sense of care with it is so important, and curiosity, but not trying to push it. Like I'm going to feel it through. And there's a little bit it's kind of helpful knowing that emotions, without us thinking, the emotion, if it just naturally rises and falls, it'll only last like a minute and a half in the body. But then we think about it and then it goes again. We think about it, it goes again. So can we start to notice, oh, that's what it's like when it starts to cool. Oh, I thought about it again. It's hot again. Okay, cool. So to just get even more and more close to it as you already are. So thank you. Oh, hi.
Hi, thank you. I've been working with some tough emotions, painful stuff around um, financial worries and anxiety around that. And, it took a break for a little while. And then some things happened. And now I feel like I'm right back in this same place. And there's these same emotions coming up. And I really want a new way to work with them because I'm really tired of this like cycle of painful stuff comes up and I'm trying not to push it away, but there's like this in the back seat, this little voice wanting to like do stuff that's not helpful, like have a drink or just like forget about it or whatever it might be. And so really wanting a different way to work with these emotions. And so this was very timely. And I've also been practicing a new literal handshake practice with people that come to the shop and my students and stuff. When I shake hands with people, I give them the second hand and I hold their hand for just a moment. And so far it's had a very good reception. People, it's comes off of as very warm, I hope. But then in the practice, I was like, okay, how can I offer that kind of a handshake practice to these painful emotions? How can I offer myself that second hand and
Mm,
kind of hold myself like that? And it's so hard to offer that to yourself
yeah,
um, in the same way that you do to others, or at least for me, it is. So
yeah,
yeah, so I did that and I sort of intentionally held that for a moment and it really just felt great. It felt really like I was practicing kindness and metta for myself, you know,
mm,
and it eases the painful emotions just a little bit, and it eases the feeling like I need to get away from them so much. So thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I love that aspiration. And, I was saying how hard it is to work with anger. Runner up is fear. And maybe for some of us, fear is even harder, right? Because it doesn't have that same urgency, but it has this kind of gnawing quality. And so yeah, it's an emotion. And especially when it's related to, like resource and survival. And, a lot of fear is, right? It's close to, our sense of survival. And so it can just be so tricky to feel like we can meet it and then also allow it to dissipate. It feels like we're getting something done when we're worrying, so it's tricky to let go of. But I like that image of like the double, the two-hand shake with yourself. And I think, I do think it's the same, which I shared with Noemi, which is we gotta let go of the story. Like fear really loves its story. And it's so funny because it really can just exacerbate our experience to continue to think about what we're afraid of. It doesn't necessarily make it any better, actually, usually the opposite. So I'll be
Yeah.
curious if this unfolds. And you can do the handshake on the spot, like right when it arises, even just one breath of of coming through. So,
Yeah. And, I tell my students all the time, remember your fundamentals.
yeah,
And, I try to go back to it's going to change, and it's already changed a little bit. And so I just have to stay there, and I'll get stronger and it'll change.
yeah. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And I saw there's more hands, but I am going to get a little bit to the teaching tonight. So sorry about that. Sorry, not sorry. But hold the question, please. And we're going to, yeah, just dig a bit more.
Eve, I'm sorry, I muted you by accident when I muted some hand raisers.
No problem. Can you hear me now? Did you hear everything? All I just said? Okay, great. Thanks, Diane. Okay, so some folks might remember, but I'll just recap that there's this beautiful story that's used as a metaphor in this beginning teaching of Tsoknyi Rinpoche. And he talks about this in Kuala Lumpur. There are these two very tall skyscrapers, and between them, at like the 111th floor or something ridiculous, there's a sky bridge that's made out of glass. And he talks about going with some fellow monks to the top of the sky bridge and wanting to cross. And they all walk, and many tourists are walking, and he's paralyzed with fear. And he's like, and he tries to tell himself, like, just go, right? Doesn't work. And gives himself this opportunity to like really reflect, like, what's going on here? Like, how do I understand this fear? And that's where he recognizes the fear to be a pattern and to be this old story. And in this case, the fear is this sense of when he was a kid and he was going through these really steep mountain passes up in the Himalayas. They would say, like, he'd be on the back of a horse or a carriage of sorts. And they'd say, oh, yeah, last week someone came by here and fell down the cliff and died. And he'd be like, so he had this like intense fear of like heights. So being up there, he realized, as I mentioned in the very beginning, this sense of fear was very real. Very real. Like, you can't just be like, no, this isn't real. I don't feel this. Like, no, you feel it. But wasn't true to this time, and the importance of this understanding something that is, real, but not true right now. Yeah, so he said, each of us has our own set of patterns, our own bridge to cross. Some of us are stuck in habitual ways of seeing ourselves as vulnerable, incompetent, lonely, unlovable, stressed, or tired. Some of us see others as threats or competitors. Some react adversely to circumstances as varied as traffic jams or weather conditions. And some of us see ourselves through the lens of chronic illness or physical or emotional abuse. I don't diminish for one moment the responses we face when we arrive at a particular bridge and are frozen by a particular pattern. But I want to point out it's possible, after we have that momentary pause or first step, that we can examine our thoughts, feelings, and sensations and ask ourselves whether or not we accept that these facts or these feelings are true. And so, just to kind of dig deeper into this teaching of real but not true, it's a really interesting one. It invites us to kind of look at our past and our patterns, and this idea that we can sometimes kind of subvert or cut off these very long-worn patterns just by like that simple phrase. Real but not true. Like, it's kind of like it just helps us like get out of, I think Tara Brach calls it like the trance of unworthiness or the trance of any of our habitual patterns of being. And, I love that he's like adapting this ancient Sanskrit word of mantra and using contemporary words like real but not true. And he says, mantra is usually understood as a special combination of ancient syllables. and it's a prayer, an invocation, and a protection. And so for him, when he wanted to cross the bridge after having stood there for 10 minutes, and I like that he describes one of the things he could have done was to just take the elevator back to the bottom and be like, that's not for me, right? And there might be these patterns in our life of fear or anger or sadness in which we're like, I'm just going to stop doing that. But then we end up making our life smaller and smaller and smaller, right? If we can't meet or face the difficulty of those patterns, we're absolutely just going to keep meeting them and not feel that strength to move forward. So I loved that was one of the options. He said another option was to have one of the monks carry him across, but he felt like that would be embarrassing. And, he tried the force and he just froze, right? So there's like not that many options when we meet these patterns. And indeed, this example is with fear. It's with fear. I think, and I myself have used real but not true with many emotions, but it works really well with fear, really well with fear. And he says, that this real but not true, it invites us to this opportunity of really considering, like, have we identified with our patterns to the point that we think our patterns are who we are? So have we identified with these patterns, especially the things we're afraid of or we don't like or that we think we're bad at, and we actually start to identify with them? Being at Spirit Rock, and I was there just before you, Noemi, in February on the month-long retreat, and being back there, I hadn't been back in these last 6 months. And I was saying to Ted before we began, I felt like arriving on the land, all my unfinished emotional business was like right there. I was like, oh no, just that kind of psychogeography of like in 30 days, you really cover the same territory a lot. And I was like, oh yeah, that's where I cried. That's where I was upset. That's where, it's like, it's all right there. And, this idea of like identifying with these patterns, and these old patterns. And I have many, but definitely one of them that's so persistent is you're doing it wrong. You could be doing it better. You're doing it wrong. You're not living up to, or you could have, right? And there's one particular picnic bench there near the eating area where I remember like having eaten, and it was like a lightning bolt coming through me, that feeling. Like I could feel it come through the body. It's one of the interesting things about longer retreat is you can get really specific on how emotions show up in the body. It's not just like, I'm stressed in my whole body, which most of us feel. It's like, whoa, like these specific areas and sensations. And so I went to that picnic bench and sat there, and I wish I could tell you that it was like gone and liberated. But I was like, that feeling, it still feels real. When I remember it and I can bring it, I still know it's not true. And I do think, having spent many years in practice trying to see these patterns and habits, I don't find it to be me as much as I used to. Like I really, and maybe some of you can relate, some of these fears, especially the ones we turn away from, we feel like it's the truth of who we are. Not only is it part of who we are, it's like the deepest truth of who we are. And part of the process of like awakening and being on the path is look really closely, because you will see that shit is not who you are. It's not who you are. And you know what? It might have been a view that you brought down from culture or society or someone in your family. And maybe it's someone else's view of who they think you are, but it's not real, right? And it's a really kind of radically compassionate act to see super clearly, like that is a pattern. That is something I've identified with. It's not real. And then there might be some room, he doesn't mention this, but for some fierce compassion of like, cut that shit out. I got it. It's tired, it's done, it's in the way. Like that's the one phrase that works for maybe my mantra is like, this is in the way. Like real but not true feels very kind. In the way is like, this is preventing me from being available to others. You know, this view, this identified view. Yeah, so I wanted to share that piece and hear specifically on that. How does that land for people? Do you recognize this like identified pattern that feels so close it's you? Yeah, are there fears that are like in there? Yeah. Do you see that it's not just like, oh, it would be nice to unpack that, but like that's in the way? Like you actually can't move forward in compassion for others if that's there, right? Because then you're not able to see that all of us have some version of this. Right? It's not a nice to have. Like we have to do this clear seeing. Yes, please, Chris. Are you coming to the bathroom or you can talk? Okay.
I'm efficient that way. I like, don't believe everything you think.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Oh. Please, Kate.
I've been doing a lot of guru yoga with Chenrezig, Zig, and one thing that has helped me in unison with the handshake practice is seeing particularly the fear, because that's a big one for me,
Yeah.
as compassion and as Chenrezig. Zig. And that has really helped shift my relationship just a tiny bit
Yeah.
towards having compassion for my fear that is also compassion that's trying to protect me,
Beautiful.
and seeing some of those more difficult emotions. And I haven't really explored it much with anger because the fear is still so strong, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious if I would assume that same because you see everything as compassion, you
Yep.
see everything as Shinraizig. So
Yeah.
I guess the same could maybe then be applied to anger
Yeah.
and sadness, that too is
Yeah.
movement in the ground and can be seen as a force of love and compassion.
Yeah. And will you say one more word on that? Like, how do you know the fear is compassion?
I think through devotion to Avalokiteshvara and taking sanctuary in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That deep level of devotion.
Sorry,
and,
online, do you mind muting for a moment before? Because it ends up being really loud for us. Thank you. Sorry, one more time.
I think it's through the devotion now that I have the confidence and the devotion in Chenrezig, in the field of compassion, that I can rest there and allow it to be there and not turn away from it.
And then again, in more like simple terms, your own kind of spiritual confidence, right,
Yeah.
allows then a sense that you can be with the fear as it is.
Yes, as it is, and to see the past patterns as the floor of as the boundless space of compassion.
Yeah.
That was there to serve me as well.
That's
and
right.
It's still the same ground that would promote enjoyment or
Yeah.
sadness or
Yep.
anger.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
so I was curious. I guess I could maybe apply that to anger too.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, in the Tsoknyi Rinpoche terms, 'cause it's funny, he has like taken away those layers, right, on top of the practice and simplified. And then like this ability to see that like there's this function too of our fear, and that would be the psychological term. And then also what you're saying is like within fear is the exact same elements that's within joy, that's within devotion and gratitude. Like it's all the same material, it's all the same wave, right? And it's taking different form. Like there's nothing in us that needs to be excluded or pushed away. Just the very Vajrayana approach, right? And it's such a relief. And so of course it can be with any emotion. And I do think the psychological can help us because we can see the fear is a particular form of compassion that meets a sense of threat. Anger is a particular form of emotion that meets this obstacle, right? So there's a wisdom in the particulars. And yeah, they do have a compassionate imprint, often from when we were really young. Like, oh, I need to get angry in the face of, this, that, or the other so that I can be heard or seen. When actually what might be needed is patience, but we've done that anger thing so much, right? And same with fear, like, I don't feel safe and there wasn't anyone there before, so I just gotta like keep vigilance all the time. And to see the wisdom and like see the beauty of it. And then I think you can't, my teacher says you can't transcend what you don't understand. So that deep understanding of this difficult emotion and even the real but not true or visualization as Chenrezig, they kind of have a similar approach. Like, I honor this and it, and especially in the real but not true, I'm bringing in this clear seeing, this insight and this wisdom, not just the compassion, the clear seeing and the wisdom. And I think that's beautiful. And it'll be interesting if and how it feels different applying it to anger. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Cage. Very beautiful. Yeah. Okay, long-awaited friend online. Victor, hi. Oh, we might have muted you because you probably don't notice it, but here in the room, when folks online unmute, it gets so loud. Oh, did you turn
Thank
the
you
volume?
for,
Oh,
can you hear
okay,
me
good.
now?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity. Basically, as I was listening to Maria, it just made me think, what have I done in my case at times when I felt either very fearful or anxious? And it just reminded me of things that I've learned through either Louis Hay or Wayne Dyer or people like them. And basically, what I remember learning from them was that there exists a wounded child in each one of us that still exists in the present time. Maybe it's more of a psychological experience, but basically the technique is about.
But wait, can I cut you off for a moment? I
Mhm.
don't want to hear a technique. I want to hear your experience.
Oh, sure. So anyway, so when I have been afraid, maybe that's a better way to rephrase it. I
Yeah.
just touch my heart and caress
Yeah,
it
beautiful.
because I believe there is a part of myself that is still wounded and frightened. So
Yeah,
while I may be afraid of something or while the fear arises, I just keep touching my heart and telling
yeah.
myself that I will be fine, that
Mm-hmm.
the victory from today will protect the victor from childhood. And I keep
Yes.
doing this motion for as long as necessary for the fear or anxiety to subside. So
Beautiful.
maybe that would help
Yeah.
Maria or someone else. Thank you.
Yeah. And I thank you. And I think, I think it's interesting again, this balance of these different approaches, you know, so elaborate and beautiful, the visualization of Chenrezig, and then the real but not true, less elaborate, but there's still a cognitive piece, hand on the heart, you're getting even more down on the ground. And then there's just being with it, right? And all of them might have their purpose at different times. And because there's like a whole lot of fear and anger going around these days, it's good to have like a bunch of options to work with. So I'd say like for everyone here, I would love for you all to feel like there are these different options. It isn't just what we do right here in the Dharma Collective, so wonderful that we can. Like, can we bring these out into the world, right? And in the moment when they're needed. Maybe the hardest thing about working with emotions is in the moment when we need them, they feel so far away. And we actually have to practice them when we're not quite emotional, like during meditation, and or like low level irritation, like just something kind of annoying, so that we actually start to develop that reflexive ability that when we're in the grip of a stronger emotion, some of this, we remember it, some of the visualization, some of the words, we can just like call upon it. So beautiful discussion. You guys, we made it to page 14. I think it's great progress. Before we do the dedication, I want to share, I did last week too, and folks might remember, I will be teaching in Italy next week, exciting, to some students who are starting their own Cultivating Emotional Balance program and training. It's really great. Haven't been there since 2017. I will eat on behalf of everyone here. Yep, it's the least I can do. And it's a beautiful opportunity to welcome Dr. Scott Blossom will be here with us. And if you don't know Scott, he's a Ayurvedic practitioner and teacher, and he'll be offering some really beautiful mantra and breath practices coming more from the Hindu tradition. He is like a hero as well as a Dharma brother and someone I really look up to, and I'm really excited you all get to experience. He's a beautiful musician and kirtan player as well. I don't think he's going to be doing that, but if you come, really encourage him, like, do kirtan here with us, because I really want him to do that as well at some time in the future. So that will be next week, and then we'll be back to open heart, open mind. So let's take a moment, bring attention and awareness inward. Let's take 3 breaths together where we're really lengthening the inhales and releasing through the open mouth on the exhale. Twice more. And one more time. Letting ourselves ride that exhale and sense of ease and connection. And taking a moment to reflect on whatever has been touched tonight through practice or reflection or discussion. And from a sense that our practice really matters, our presence really matters. We dedicate this practice, this reflection, this energy, and placing hands together at the heart if that feels comfortable. In this symbolic gesture, offering this practice. All of our good effort and intention, may it all be in service that beings everywhere across this planet could feel more free from inner and outer harms, safe and protected. That all beings everywhere could know love and belonging. That all beings everywhere could live in peace and ease. Thank you so much for your practice and your heart.